it's called a wordle, a word cloud. As we talk about doing research, we're not only helping them develop critical thinking skills, we're encouraging them to learn lots of things. How to prioritize their time, how to be persuasive in their presentation, how to learn to work with a partner who may be in a different town or state, and prepare for the debate. Just give you a larger context for doing research. Why do research? Lots of things related to it. So let me signpost. We're going to look at this session in about 3 parts. First part, we'll actually analyze the resolution that's set before us for the next few months. Then we'll look at library speak, information sources. How do we think about the world of information beyond the Google box, and have another picture of the world of information, which might assist us in doing the third part, that is tools and tricks for doing efficient searching. So I think you might be thinking we're only going to focus on using Google well, but before we get to that point, I want us to understand our topic, understand how we might conceptualize information, because it's not a black box. It's actually many boxes. And you learn about those boxes together. And then we'll transfer that A and that B into C, actually using Google to do some searching. And then as a bonus, as a D. So don't let me forget, there's a D. Right? A, that's a resolution. What you did not get are the words in parentheses. When I threw down there, it was full of $5 words. Biosurveillance. What on earth is that? You know the phrase, prevention is better than the cure? This resolution turns it around. The cure is more important or more effective than prevention. And that's how you might want to simplify the whole topic of dealing with bioterrorism. As you take this resolution back to your chapters, I think the first word that will throw people off is defining bioterrorism. That may be a challenge. What is it? What is it not? What does the resolution not deal with? So I want to make our time interactive. Feel free to just shout things out and we'll bounce things around. And I think when you get back to your chapters, you might want to do the same thing with the student. What do you think this means? Without the aid of dictionary, we'll eventually get to proper definitions, but ideas now. Kimberly.
What it is not is bullets and bombs and such, right?
Okay. Yes, that's one aspect. Sure. Tim?
What is bioterrorism?
Yeah.
Like using diseases as a weapon.
Okay.
And then using that to create not only actual death, but also panic.
Any other thoughts?
It's not only just diseases, anything that's living,
Then it's living.
organic.
Okay. So the contrast, we're not talking chemical warfare, because this is always very closely related. Biological and chemical warfare is often very closely related, and we're not dealing with sarin gas.
Okay.
Some chemical warfare is biological. And it could be just diseases, it could also be toxins or pathogens. These are some of the words you come across in doing your research. A broader term that this fits under, weapons of mass destruction, WMD. You hear that too. But if we remember that we're talking about biological weapons, that will help. Bioweapons, biological weapons. The resolution as it is crafted calls for a national response. So your student will have to define what national is, which nation, what the response is, what sort of response is appropriate, and then come up with an understanding of, no, we're not talking about states or localities, but perhaps you might want to say the national response is to encourage cooperation among states within a region. You could also include a national. You could also talk about a national response, including an international component to it. The U.S. ought to participate in an international treaty for X, Y, Z. I think that last one should be obvious. It should be the obvious thing, there is a threat. Could you think of an alternate way of dealing with that part of the resolution?
Ask the question again.
The word threat, is there a way? We often have our students take all the words that are in the resolution in order to define them and incorporate them into some sort of plan. So is that word important, or should we just throw it away?
Is it possibility? Could it be the possibility of it, or a known possibility?
Is it already real? Is it a future threat? Is that the kind of questions that we're?
Things like that, yes?
Yeah, I think it's very important when you study military threats, you have to study the components of the threat, which include not only capability, but intent, right? The country in the world today that could best take on our Navy is Great Britain. They have no intent of attacking us. So
They're capable,
Great
but-
Britain is no threat, even though they have the capability. So anyway, I think threat's an important term.
Thank you, thank you. That's a good way of breaking it down. Capability plus intent.
I think it just kind of says that it exists, that it's there. The word
It's
threat.
there, so
That
we may be,
The subject is there, bioterrorism.
bioterrorism is there.
It exists.
It's there. We may be forced to come up with examples of an actual occurrence. There are very few examples in this country, very, very few examples of intentional harm occurring. Lots of accidental ones. E. coli in hamburger, for example, is unintentional, but imagine that being intentional, it becomes bioterrorism. Yes?
Can you repeat what you said about response? What we said? I'm sorry, I was trying to.
That the debaters in handling this resolution has to come up with a plan that actually talks about a response.
Right.
Not simply we know about it, but we'll do something about it.
Right.
And the resolution as it stands says, one way is better than another. Okay. That's how the resolution stands. One way is better than another. The con will say, no, the other way is better. So it has to be a response. It cannot simply be academic. We want the debaters to say, we want to address it, and this is how we address it in order to support the resolution. Yes?
I know about 8 years ago, my husband had a biological warfare class that he had to go through. He's a first responder, he's a firefighter, lieutenant in the Austin Fire Department. So this is exciting. And they're already, training first responders and have been for about the past 5-10 years.
Yes, yes. A lot of attention is paid towards being responsive. Which is why we put it up there as the pro side, because we think that will allow people to develop the plan, but the opposite side is also very unit.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
Usually in this style of debate, we don't actually come up with full plans. So we have to be careful when we say this is how you're going to respond. It's more, this is an approach rather than this is a plan.
Okay, we use the word plan as an approach. Thank you for the clarification. An approach. So we now should quickly dip into those two words. You don't have to furiously scribble every word on here, because the slides from this presentation will be available on the,
Coach Wiki, they're already there.
thank you. They're on the Coach Wiki. You can just sit back and notice that there are no pictures. I'm a very word-dependent person. The other presenters have used pictures liberally, and my typical slides are bare bones. Except I found this grid, so that works for me. So let me highlight two for you. Under biosurveillance, the one that you were talking about was first responders being medically prepared. And I think about the incident in Boston recently. They were prepared. Every hospital ER was ready. Within a minute of the incident, they swung into action. Are we similarly prepared to deal with some pathogen coming into the community? So that's the medical preparedness that we understand. The other one I think we understand is this thing called biosurveillance. This is not spying on someone, this is merely tracking the spread of the disease. If there are 3 or 4 people getting sick, where are they getting sick? Always isolated. Hey, it is now in 3 states. Where did it start from? Where is the likely trajectory of this spread? You look at the avian flu situation in China. Where did it start? And eventually you can figure out, here's the epicenter. Because everyone has a common place that will add during these 36 hours. It probably started here. Now let's follow the spread. And now, of course, it's getting a little scary because they're tracking people all the way into the Middle East and Europe. People are getting sick along the way and affecting others. So that part is the biosurveillance and disease reporting. So 2 examples to understand this topic. The other part, the prevention, the big one is the prohibition. International Convention on Biological Weapons, BWC. It's a big thing. Some countries are signatories to it. I'm not sure the US is. So at an international level, there are some efforts to address this concern from the prevention side. The other one is oversight of dangerous research. There are only so many places in the world with the live smallpox pathogens.
Cultures.
It's a virus.
Cultures.
Cultures?
You can't buy it off the shelf.
You're lucky key.
Yeah, only about 3 places in the world with that stuff.
I did biology world too.
So, can we track these things for other kinds of pathogens? And if so, who and where? That's the idea of oversight of dangerous research. Because somebody's got to keep studying this in order to develop vaccines or medical responses to the pathogen themselves. So those are a couple of examples. All right? True story. Taking time for you to bring up a machine, bring up Google. For those of you who have machines, bring up Google and type in this phrase. Ready?
Ready.
Information on owls. Now what? Switch your phones. First person to get a hit, tell me the first site ranked by Google.
Rutgers.
RCI
Rutgers.
Okay, now click on the link and make sure that it actually deals with the bird and not some sports team. In my hometown, our high school's mascot, the Owls. So if you talk about the Owls, it's usually the high school football team.
The owls or the owls?
OWLS.
Owls.
Yes?
I tried.
All right. Question. Why is this site the first one? Hmm?
Do they pay money?
It's a Rutgers site. They pay nobody nothing.
More people have gone to it than any other site.
More people go to another site. Number of hits. Anton?
According to Google, this site's the most relevant.
Most relevant to the phrase we use. I fed you a phrase that matches the title of the
There's a
page.
title on the page, yeah.
That's right. If you typed in owl information, I think that will rank this page number 2. So, when you do a Google search, the first instinct is to look at the first 10 and pick out the first 1 or 2 and assume that's what you go with. Dangerous. In this example, that page was put together not by an ornithologist. It was put together by yours truly. Many years ago, I was probably the first person on the planet to create a page of links to owl information because it's our family mascot. You get it? Okay. And this little guy here is a spotted owl. I know that only because I went searching to see if I could find a matching image. So I can tell you that that's a spotted owl. It's a northern spotted owl. But other than that, I don't know very much about owls. However, I have received email from people asking me about this owl in their neighborhood, and should they do something about it? And that person asking about how to build a nesting box, and this person saying, could you identify this particular bird? It looks like a owl. Could I confirm the sighting? And that person who says, you know, I also like owls, and here is my website. I get all that email because my page comes up first, not because I'm an expert. Similarly, if you start doing this research and you put in some keywords into Google, you might come up with a page that rise up to the top, not necessarily because it is the best site, but because it's been around the longest and other people point to it. So my page is your exhibit A of a result that comes from a search that does not reflect that. We need to have our students learn about the basic criteria for determining reliability. ABC. Very easy to remember. So A is authority. Is it authoritative? If you're looking at our topic and you have a choice between a blog post by John Q. Smith and a report from the Department of Defense, who's more authoritative? On the surface, DOD. Although you don't know that the blog post was written by General so-and-so, retired General so-and-so, we don't know that. But instinctively, we say authoritative sources are of a certain kind, and others are not as authoritative. So that's the first one, authority. B stands for bias. Every source will be biased. It's not a judgment call in terms of whether it's biased this way or that way, simply that there will be a bias. If the website on bioterrorism is produced by the American Academy of Pediatricians, what do you think their bias is? Kids, and probably from their point of view, medical preparedness. And they'll probably say nothing about prevention. It's not their interest. It's just out of their realm. So they are biased towards one aspect of our resolution that they had no hand in crafting. But bias can come in depending on the source. Is this organization already predisposed to a particular viewpoint? They might be. They might be against any international intervention, and that any approach that we take to address the issue is for the US. We will take care of our own before we think about any other country, any other people, even if they are ally nations in NATO. And it's a particular bias of this organization. Some think tanks have biases. You probably can understand that. Some are more conservative, others are more liberal, others are libertarian. Politically, they may have a bias, and that might influence their view on our topic. That might lead to a particular kind of approach to address the threat. So be aware of bias. Third one, C, currency. Not the money, but the timeliness. I remember doing a search on a particular topic for one of the students, and something came up to the top. The topic was correct, but it dealt with the issue from 100 years ago. So it's a fairly fresh page, but the content was out of date. And sometimes it is out of your hands. Whatever you find may or may not be current. Bioterrorism as a topic is not a new thing. And there is a lot of stuff out there from the last year, as well as from 10 years ago. And we encourage our students to try and get information that is from the last
2 years, 5 years at the most.
so that you have more current information to use. Not that you cannot use the older material, but if you see older material, you might discover that others have referred to it. And you can then bring it forward. It's particularly important if you're trying to track legislation. And some student says, well, the US government enacted this bill. Okay, they did, 15 years ago. Is it still relevant? I don't know. Was it a follow-up? I don't know. Was it amended? Or, what's the word? Overturned? Reversed? I don't know. So maybe very fine 15 years ago, But in the intervening years, new legislation came up on the same topic that completely reverses the approach that was given, the ABC. This one is a little longer. Sit and stare at that one. This took me a while to come up with.
Many sleepless nights.
I had help. There's an online website for solving crossword puzzles. It's an anagram maker and solver. So I simply had to come up with enough words or letters for it to generate words. And eventually I came up with this thing. It's a little contrived. It's going to be a little test. Instead of thinking about information in general as coming from this black box called Google, unless you like Microsoft's Bing, same idea, instead of simply assuming that everything comes from anywhere, we who work in the information field often categorize the sources as sources, the originating source, the publisher, if you will. So can you guess at some of what these letters might stand for? I'll give you a simple one. This T here, think tanks. Okay, I just gave one away, it's very simple. Think tanks. So shout out what you might think is a possible source, yes?
Dictionary.
Dictionary. Okay, so I'm not thinking about publication,
Okay.
but the publisher. So who might put out our dictionary?
Oh, Webster.
Merriam-Webster.
Okay, so
Distributor.
that is a commercial publisher. So that's our C, commercial firms.
Oh,
Commercial firms. So imagine an information source might come from Boeing. As a Boeing commercial firm, as a C. Yes?
G for government?
G for government, that was an easy one.
D for databases.
Did you tap my phone? Very good. The D is databases. Right. Yes.
Individual?
Yes. Thank you. I had to figure out how to put in the bloggers.
Yes.
Yeah. So individuals.
I was
as
thinking
a-
like individual experts or interviews or something like that.
Sure. In fact, the I is for individuals.
And it's gotta be something with news.
Which one?
And news, something with
Corporations, news sources.
Yeah, news sources. I said news gatherers.
There's two new.
There are two N's. There's another N. Yes. So the one N is news gatherers, news sources.
Could E be educational?
Yes. Educational institutions.
Authors.
Authors could be from any of those places.
Oh, okay.
Let's do two more, then I'll reveal the results. You try for anything else?
What was E again?
Educational institutions.
Public library.
Libraries don't usually generate information. They might hold but not generate information. But they are represented in the D, the database.
Polls or research, would P be polls?
Okay, ready?
Yes.
So you see, I had to finagle some of these terms to come up with my dancing pet acronym. Look what's at the end of each one. You recognize those? Officially, they're called top-level domains, TLDs. What does the ICC website end with? So if we know ICC is considered a non-profit organization, the most appropriate top-level domain is .org. Some companies buy up domain names to make sure no one gets them. So that if you try Coke.org, you might still end up in Coca-Cola.com. So some companies want to make sure that no one else gets their top-level domain. They register many domains. My university, Rutgers, is not only Rutgers.edu, they're also Rutgers.org as well as Rutgers.com. Any of those will take you back to the university's homepage. But this helps you see that there might be a way to limit our search results by the originating source. Okay, let's go. So first, Google tip. If you're limiting your search results, let me suggest you put in the word bioterrorism. Don't hit enter after you do the bioterrorism. And you want to limit the results to come only from the military. Here's the syntax. Bioterrorism, space, SINTAX. S-I-T-E, site, colon, .mil.
Likely to bring a browser up?
On here?
Yeah, I could do that. I can hear text.
Oh, okay, sure. You demo that, Kristen, for me?
I'll do my best.
You have to switch between PowerPoint and browser. Of course, you use Chrome.
Obviously.
Obviously. Okay, so, bioterrorism. Dot. Thank you.
Colon dot.
Yeah, colon dot. Now if you stare at the result screen, you'll see that every one of these results. Stop. Thank you. Stop.
It's doing it all by itself.
It's doing it by itself? It's rolling up and down by itself?
And what about?
The screen is jumping up and down by itself.
Oh.
But every site is a dot. Okay?
Colon and a dot.
Colon and a dot and top level domain. Just for your interest, the few you saw on my slide, the ones you know commonly, .com, .edu, .org, .gov, .mil, those are the only ones. There are probably 200 other top level domains. There are country codes. So if you want things only from Japan, it is site::jp. If you only want things from the Japanese government, it is go.jp. If you're looking at things in the UK, it's .uk. If there's universities in the UK, it's not edu, they use AC. So it's .ac.uk. I could go on, but you get the picture. There is a way to limit your search results to a particular domain. And if you only want a particular domain, you can do that. And with this topic, I think you might want to consider running a search for any keyword and limit the domain. All right, let's switch back to the PowerPoint quickly. That's my next slide. That one. Okay. Next one is phrases. Okay, back to this phrase. Back to the Google page. Thank you. Typically, you put in a word or two or three or four. If you want a phrase, tell Google so. It's very simple. You enclose the phrase in double quotes. You know the air quotes? So let's the phrase. And the order of the words matter. I'll give you a simple example. To me, it's simple because it's my field. Foreign direct investment. 3 words. Foreign direct investment. It's not the same as direct foreign investment. Let me repeat. Foreign direct investment means one thing, and the other one is direct foreign investment. It means opposite. It's money going out or money coming in. If you would search the words without the quotes, you get a gazillion results. If you enclose it in quote, you get better results because you are asking Google to retrieve things that have those words in that order, whatever order you chose. It's specific.
Put it in quotes.
In quotes. I'll preserve the order of the phrase. I'll give you a facetious example. The stuff that you use as window treatments that have slats, what do you call those?
Blinds.
And sometimes we associate, thank you, Venetian blinds. If you did blind, the quotes do mean something. Third tip is parentheses. Parentheses. Why do we use parentheses? Let's do an example now. Can you knock all that out? Knock all that out.